and as chairperson Pen, okay, let me start over. Good afternoon. My name is Tennessee Reed, and as chairperson of Pen Oakland, I want to thank you for joining in the celebration of the 35th annual Pen Oakland Awards. The board of directors joins me in thanking Brian Gunther at the Oakland Public Library for allowing us to present the awards virtually. To begin, I would like to read you a bit of history about how Pen Oakland started, which was written by Ishmael Reed, a founder of this Pen chapter. It appears in its introduction to Fightin' Words, 25 years of provocative poetry and prose from the Blue Collar Pen, an anthology of poetry, fiction, and essays edited by Judith Cody, Kim McMillan, and Claire Ortalda, all former board members, that was published by Heyday Books in 2014. In the mid-70s, I was hired as director of the San Francisco State Poetry Center. Uproar occurred. Some of the white poets feared a Black uprising that would eliminate their participation. I met Floyd Salas. Floyd became my ally to reform what I was calling at the time the AT&T of the poetry world, which at that time was dominated by the Beat Generation and its acolytes. I wrote an essay about this monopoly, which incurred the wrath of Allen Ginsberg, who bawled me out during a luncheon at Enrico's. I held my ground, and Bob Callahan pointed out to Ginsberg about the Beat Generation's reputation as misogynist and exclusional racially. Ginsberg saw the light and toward the end of his life taught a course in African American literature at Brooklyn College. I was one of his guest lecturers. All one has to do is read poets and writers to see the American literary scene is still a white chauvinist scene. The possible exception is the Naropa Institute, which under the leadership of Anne Waldman is a model of diversity. The mainstream, forget it. With the exception of a few tokens, it remains one in which multicultural poets are marginalized. An example occurred recently in the New York Times Book Review, in which one of the tokens wrote about politics and contemporary lit culture. Not a single Black American, Native American, Hispanic, or Asian American was mentioned. Floyd had shown his mettle when a movement to make San Francisco State more diverse was met by strong armed resistance. The late Al Young and I published his novel, Lay My Body on the Line, about the drive for an inclusive ethnic studies department. He is probably the best Oakland novelist since Jack London. Floyd Salas was a perfect ally in our attempt to build institutions that would support diversity. In keeping with our philosophy of building our own institutions instead of waiting around to be selected as a token by the establishment, like the dog who showed up every night at the train station to greet his master, not realizing that his master was dead. Floyd, Claire Altalda, and I founded Pen Oakland. We've become known as the Blue Collar Pen by the New York Times, which is appropriate since most of us are of working class origin, and often our discussions take the form of a Pier 6 brawl. Ultimately, we have survived these decades intact because none of us has forgotten where we came from. We are for a long twilight struggle, but in the end, our country will be in better shape than the one we found. We will have helped to create not only an exclusive city on a hill, but the inclusive rainbow city in the valley. You may have noticed that some of our awards carry the name of the late Josephine Miles, a poet and longtime faculty member of the UC Berkeley English Department who died in 1985. She was the first woman to receive tenure at the UC Berkeley English Department and the only member of the UC Berkeley faculty who would show up at our multicultural poetry readings. So in her honor, I'm going to read one of her poems after this fee that appears in an oral biography, Teaching Poet, edited by Marjorie Larney and was republished from Lines at Intersection, 1939. This is as far as the land goes. After this, it is sea. This is where my father stopped, being no sailor, being no Beowulf, no Orient spice hungry. Here he let horizons come quietly to rest. What he fled is past and over, raftered roof and quilted cover, the known street and the known face, the stale place. This is as far as the land goes. Here we are at bay, facing back on the known street and roof, all flight, spent before birth in building the new towns, letting these last horizons come quietly to rest. We have a special pressing need. We of this outer border breed, to climb these hills we cannot flee, to swim in the sea. This is as far as the land goes. Here the coast ranges, soft and brown stand down to hold the ocean. Here the winds are named for saints and blow on leaves. Small, young, yellow, few, but bound to be ancestral. Nowhere are here still to hear, for horizons are so clear. Whatever we make here, whatever find, we cannot leave behind. Now let's move on to presenting the awards. I would like to introduce our MC for the afternoon, Neil Guillermo, who is an award-winning journalist, writer, broadcaster, and performer with over 30 years of experience covering race, culture, and social justice. A former host of NPR's All Things Considered, Emil was the first Filipino American and first Asian American male to host a national news program. Emil has written for outlets like USA Today, San Francisco Chronicle, and NBC News. And he is the author of Amok, Essays from an Asian American Perspective, winner of an American Book Award in 2000. His Emil Amok column continues to appear weekly, the Manila-based Philippine Inquirer, Inquirer.net, the Oakland Post, the Hawaii Filipino Chronicle, and ASAM News since 2016. Emil has written and performed 3 one-man stand-up shows that blend humor, storytelling, and insight to explore identity and the Asian American experience. His new show is Amok Monologue 69, about the second coming of Donald Trump. Self-diagnosed as ADHD, Emil has turned to poetry and was recently named poetry for his small town in the Central Valley, poet laureate. Born in San Francisco's Mission District, Emil is an alumnus of Harvard in the same class as Bill Gates. In his spare time, he hosts and produces the PETA podcast, the Pen Oakland podcast, and Emil Amok's Takeout. He does a show daily on www.patreon.com/Emil Amok. He plays the owner of the Titanic in the upcoming New York production of Ishmael Reed's The Shine Challenge. Emil Guillermo.
Hey, thanks, Tennessee. I guess that says all I need to say. I am very honored to be here with this group. I realize that I did belong because I wrote essays. I hadn't written a novel, but I started because of my ADHD, self-diagnosed, started writing poetry. So I got the P covered, I got the E covered, and I do one-man shows. So that's PNOM. Anyway, I don't know what acronym, but I have my own subgroup of Pen. I'm pleased to be here to MC a portion of these awards today. I want to introduce someone who is part of this cabal here. He's with City Lights, and he's going to self-introduce because I went to Chat GPT and asked for the biography of Michael Young, and I said he's an African-American writer, and Chat GPT said Michael Young is an African-American writer and educator with a PhD in writing and literature from the University of Cincinnati.
I'm fascinated by that. I mean,
I know, and I know.
Finest, yeah. That's.
It said, and he has been a part-time instructor in the Department of English at the University of Pittsburgh. Clearly, not the same Michael Young.
Yeah.
Let me introduce the real Michael Young.
Oh, well.
Who will talk about not just himself, but our next winners.
Not at all about myself. Sometimes writer. I used to write a culture column for French Vogue, had a bunch of little articles published. Been at City Lights for years and book sales and publishing. My father was Al Young, who was on the board of Penn, and Ishmael's bestie going back, half a century. They started Yardberg Reader together. Anyway.
So who are our next winners?
Yes. My
Our first winners
is, and I know this has already gotten a lot of love, is Henry Threadgill's Easily Slip into Another World. The sublime jazz musician and multi-instrumentalist, Chicago raised. I think he has something like 37 albums. One of the most expansive musicians I've ever met. But it's Henry Threadgill with Brent Hayes Edwards, the teacher at Columbia, and I know he's won an American Book Award. Written another beautiful book called Epistrophes about jazz and language and the Black art movement. But this book was wonderful. It was kind of like Miles and Quincy's incredible memoir, where you just kind of get that kind of intimate, you could almost hear like Miles's intimate whisper, just like this kind of confessional tone. And one of my favorite books of the year, obviously. So Brent says, I started this book about the New York loft scene in downtown Manhattan in the 70s. People like Ornette Coleman and Sam Rivers. And eventually, when it was time to interview Henry, they ended up doing a complete oral history with him, which lasted like 3 years, from his upbringing in Chicago, to his service in Vietnam, to the present. And I discovered that I really dug the dialogic and improvisational aspect of kind of this oral history, with a musician, kind of like live jazz itself. And eventually I had hundreds of single-space pages, but we never actually had a discussion about writing a book. It just kind of became a gradual revelation. And suddenly this book kind of just appeared, almost like alchemy, which I thought I really enjoyed his description of that. What does he say? Brent says, this book is a lot of books. It's books interwoven with other books. And it was a profound journey I had with Henry. And he would like to thank us very much for this honor. And I'm not going to read from the book, but I think one of my favorite parts was when Henry was in the Army. He was 22 years old. He was in an Army band. And they asked him to compose a jazz version of American patriotic songs like America the Beautiful and Star Spangled Banner. And mind you, this is years before Hendrix's, legendary Woodstock performance, where he mutates the Star Spangled Banner. But so he goes on there with his octet, tuba, violin. This is the Midwest in the mid-60s. And Henry had been listening to people like Thelonious Monk and Stravinsky and Cecil Taylor, and they do the most out versions of Star Spangled Banner and God Bless America. And finally, this priest gets up and just says, "This is blasphemy. This is blasphemy. You're raping and exploiting, our beautiful, patriotic music." So Henry's immediately shipped to Vietnam as part of the 4th Infantry Division. And Henry says, this was a musical picadillo. And I think this experience earned me a probable death sentence. But luckily it didn't. And the book is just beautiful. It's kind of like a tapestry of his life up until now. And yes, thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
Yeah.
The first Josephine Miles Award goes to Henry Threadgill.
Yes.
And Brent Hayes Edwards, Easily Slip into Another World, A Life in Music, published by Knopf. Thanks,
Yes.
Michael.
Of course, yes.
And now for our next award, I introduce Ma Shane Wynn. She's a poet. Her new full-length poetry collection is Percussing the Thinking Jar, published by Omnidon. Her previous full-length collection is Storage Unit for the Spirit House. She is the inaugural Poet Laureate of El Cerrito, California. Wynn's previous collections include Invisible Gifts and 2 chapbooks, Ruins of a Glittering Palace and Score and Bone. She teaches poetry in the MFA program at USF, along with Dawn Angelica Barcelona and Mary Vollmer. She is a co-founder of Maker, Mentor, Muse, a literary community, and she will now introduce our next winner, Aria D. Matthews. Ma?
Neil, thank you. It's truly a joy to honor Bread and Circus by Aria D. Matthews with a 2024 Pen Oakland Josephine Miles Award. Published by Scribner, this brilliant and intimate memoir in verse is described as a bold poetic reckoning with the realities of systemic poverty and its intergenerational effects. Bread and Circus is formally virtuosic and emotionally gratifying. Aria D. Matthews' first collection of poems is the critically acclaimed Simulacra, which received the prestigious 2016 Yale Series of Younger Poets Award. Matthews has earned a Guggenheim Fellowship, an Academy of American Poets Laureate Fellowship, a Pew Fellowship, and the Rona Jaffe Foundation Writers Award. From 2022 to 2023, she served as Philadelphia's 6th Poet Laureate. She is an associate professor and co-chairs the creative writing department at Bryn Mawr College. And now I'd like to share Aria D. Matthews' acceptance speech. Good afternoon, beloveds. I am profoundly humbled to accept the Josephine Miles Award in Poetry. I want to extend my deepest gratitude to Pen Oakland for honoring me with this recognition and for their steadfast commitment to championing diverse voices and narratives in the literary world. And a very special thank you to Ma for reading this in my health-inflected absence. For me, poetry has always been a way of confronting and holding the mysteries of life, those emotional landscapes that evade easy understanding, but demand to be acknowledged. In my own journey as a poet, I've grappled with grief, love, and the haunting presence of absence, particularly in the wake of my father's death. He passed away when I was a young adult, leaving behind not just an empty space, but an unresolved grief, a specter that has lingered, quietly shaping my life and my work. For years, I resisted naming that grief, touching it, or giving it space to breathe. But poetry has given me a way to reach into that ungovernable sadness, to map its contours and trace the threads of humanity that bind us all to loss, to love, and to longing. In the act of writing, I have found a way to make peace with the unresolved, to hold tension without forcing resolution, and to honor the mystery of what it means to be human. I believe that poetry offers us a space to articulate the unspeakable. It's not about offering answers, but about creating a site of remembrance, a place where the individual and the universal converge. Each poem becomes a kind of map, charting the emotional and experiential terrains of our lives. My work has been, in many ways, an effort to chart these landscapes. First desire, then grief, and more recently with Bread and Circus, the patterns of survival that emerge in the aftermath of loss. This award is a testament to the power of words to connect us across time and experience. It's also a testament to the people who have nurtured me along the way, my working class roots, my family, my mentors, my peers, and the readers who have found something of themselves in my work. Thank you for your belief in me and for your willingness to journey with me through the landscapes I've tried to map. To be recognized among the extraordinary poets who have come before me is an honor I do not take lightly. I accept this award not just as a validation of my work, but as a responsibility to continue exploring the complex, often difficult truths that define our shared humanity. Thank you, Pen Oakland, for this incredible honor. And thank you to everyone who has walked this path with me. This moment is as much yours as it is mine. Thank you.
Thanks, Ma. Our winner of Josie Miles Award, Pen Oakland, Ira D. Matthews, Bread and Circus, published by Scribner. The next winner is Daniel Mason for Northwoods, a novel published by Random House. Daniel, I don't believe is with us. Is there a representative? I don't think so. Daniel is an American novelist and physician, born and raised in the Bay Area in Palo Alto. He went to Harvard and graduated from the UC San Francisco School of Medicine. His debut novel, The Piano Tuner, in 2002 became a national bestseller. And this work now, Northwoods, a novel published by Random House, we honor with a Josephine Miles Award. For our next award, we turn to Tennessee Reed, who will introduce Nick Watts and Sakina Carmagee for Toussaint Louverture, the story of the only successful slave revolt in history, published by Verso. Tennessee, you've seen prior in this program. She's the author of 7 poetry collections, a memoir, and a novel. She has read her work around the U.S. and the continental U.S. and also in England and Netherlands and all throughout Europe. Her 7th poetry collection, Calafia Burning, was published on November 3rd, 2020. Her most recent readings include the Whitney Biennial in New York City and Write America. She is the chairperson of Pen Oakland, the managing editor of Conch Magazine, and the editor-in-chief of Tar Baby Quarterly. Tennessee Reed.
Thank you. Nick Watts and Sakina Karimji work together to adapt and illustrate graphic novels. Nick Watts is an illustrator, creating artwork for numerous fiction and nonfiction for both children and adults. From illustrating children's books, Stanley Bones and the Great Dinosaur Mystery, Little Tiger Press and Groomed, to working with UK-based charities, including the NSPCC and FPA, and for newspapers such as The Guardian. Sakina Karimji has a background in theater, set and costume design, production, and draughting, working for companies including Royal Opera House, National Theatre, and Theatre by the Lake. She is currently working for the English National Opera. In recent years, she has also turned her attention to adapting graphic novels, using her visual skills and understanding of storytelling to communicate with the reader rather than audience. And here's their book. Oh, it's disappearing in the background. Toussaint Louverture, the story of the only successful slave revolt in history.
Hi, thank you very much for this award. We were very delighted to get it. It was a big shock. And it's a great honor to be recognized alongside all the other amazing writers and poets who are here today. I guess we have some people to thank. We'd like to thank Faith Childs, our amazing agent who saw the potential in this project many years ago when we first came to her. And also we'd like to thank Christian Hosberg, who's a historian in the UK who came across James's play, C.L.R. James's play. The play was written in the 1930s and performed once with Paul Robeson as the lead, and then subsequently lost. So it was then rediscovered 70 years later by Christian Hosberg when he was researching his PhD. I suppose also we'd like to thank C.L.R. James, who is the amazing political activist, historian, polymath, and cricket correspondent. So, you know, and also we'd also...
Yeah, who wrote... So our graphic novel is a direct, verbatim adaptation of his play.
Yeah.
Just to...
Yeah, and also we'd like to thank everyone at Verso, and especially Andy Sow, our amazing editor. We embarked on this project over 10 years ago, and obviously as an illustrator, I'd always wanted to like create a full-length graphic novel. But also wanted the story of the Haitian Revolution is so untold, and we really wanted to bring that story to a wider audience. And we hope in receiving this award that perhaps it will get even more people out there.
Yeah, so our graphic novel, it tells the inspirational story of the Haitian Revolution, which started as an uprising against slavery. In Haiti, or Saint-Domingue as it was known then, was a French colony. It was the most profitable colony on the planet at the time. It had a bigger economy than the US at the time. It produced more sugar than the whole of the British Caribbean islands put together. You know, it was a hugely important kind of colonial place. And it did this off the back of the most exploited and abused enslaved people, you know, within an incredibly exploitative, abusive system. And in the wake of the turmoil of the French Revolution, the enslaved people embarked on a 12-year-long struggle for their freedom. In that time, they defeated not only the French, who were their colonial masters, but also the invading armies of Spain and Britain, who both wanted to try and take the colony and all those lovely profits that Saint-Domingue was producing for themselves. They ended slavery in what is now Haiti forever, and they established the first sort of independent Black republic outside of Africa. You know, it was a huge challenge to racism and colonialism. And as we've written on the back of the book, you know, it's perhaps the greatest victory of the oppressed over their oppressors in all history. You know, you see them, the most downtrodden and exploited people defeat the most powerful, you know, colonial empires of the time. Yet, you know, it's events that most of the world know very little about. And it's hugely underrepresented in popular culture. And, you know, these events that are from over 200 years ago now are still so hugely inspirational, and they teach us lessons about the world today, and they teach us lessons about how to continue to resist and challenge racism and colonialism and things today. And it's, you know, for those reasons, C.L.R. James wanted to write books about it in the 1930s, and that we wanted to create this book today.
Sure, and a graphic novel is such a sort of powerful way to communicate with people, and to communicate clearly and communicate complex histories, and make them more accessible. So, you know, we'd like to dedicate this award to like all the people around the world who are currently fighting for justice, and they stand on the shoulders of, you know, people like the men, women, and children of the Haitian Revolution, who did such a phenomenal, historic, world-breaking event. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you again. C.L.R. James, adaptation by Nick Watson, Sakina Karimji for Toussaint Louverture, the story of the only successful slave revolt in history, published by Verso, another winner of the Josephine Miles Award presented by Pen Oakland. For our next award, I call on Pen Oakland board member Lucille Langday. She's the author of 4 poetry chapbooks and 7 full-length collections, most recently Birds of San Pancho and Other Poems of Place. She's also the editor of Poetry and Science, Writing Our Way to Discovery, the co-editor of Fire and Rain, and she has many children's books and a memoir. Her honors include the Blue Light Poetry Prize, 2 Pen Oakland Josephine Miles Literary Awards, the Joseph Henry Jackson Award, and 11 Pushcart Prize nominations. She is the founder and publisher of a small press, Scarlet Tanager Books. Here is Lucille Langday with our next Josephine Miles Award presentation.
Thank you, Emil. I have the pleasure and honor of presenting a Pen Oakland Josephine Miles Literary Award to Survival Food, Northwood Stories by a Menominee Cook by Thomas Pecor Weezo, Wiso, who was born in 1953, died on July 14th, 2023. In addition to being a writer, he was an educator, artist, enrolled member of the Menominee Indian Nation of Wisconsin, and a member of the Bear Clan. Survival Food was recognized by the Library of Congress's Center for the Book as the 2024 Great Reads adult title for the state of Wisconsin. Wiso's first food memoir, Good Seeds, a Menominee Indian food memoir, was reviewed widely and won a National Gourmand Award. He also wrote the children's book, Native American Stories for Kids, which was named a 2023 Kansas Notable Book. Wiso was an alumnus of Haskell Indian Nations University and the University of Kansas, where he earned a master's degree in Indigenous Studies. He taught social science classes in Kansas area colleges for 20 years. Survival Food is a collection of recipes and stories. This is the book. It was published by the Wisconsin Historical Society Press. The stories, which are based on Wiso's recollections of family members and friends from the Menominee Indian Reservation, are told with humor and affection. They are complemented by recipes ranging from mouth-watering instructions for cooking wild asparagus, which I would love to try, to intriguing advice for preparing bear stew. So Wiso's Pen Oakland Award will be accepted by his wife, Denise Lowe, a former poet laureate of the state of Kansas. Welcome, Denise.
Thank you so much, Lucy, and thank you. I'm so appreciative of the entire board of the Oakland Pen organization, and I appreciate the Josephine Miles example and heritage that we are continuing. I also want to say I thought the world of Al Young and Ishmael Reed is what I feel very honored to be on the same screen with some of these role models that I have had. I could say so much about Tom and about his book, and that how much, of course, we all wish he were here. He had a remarkable life beginning in the mid-century. He literally, his family is so poor that they lived in a dirt floor teepee and for some years, and he said it was cold. It was not a romantic experience. In Wisconsin, it's a very cold way to live. He went with his family back and forth to the cities, Chicago, Milwaukee. So he had a patchwork education, and he is, I think, quite heroic for the way he was able to take the best from the world of words and storytelling. His authenticity, he does not make a native life something glamorous or select out only the pretty parts, but he always makes it funny. And I will read a couple paragraphs so you may hear his voice. Today's Sunday dinner consisted of turkey burgers, canned green beans, and gravy, a comfort meal that needed only a packet of instant potatoes to make it complete. Our professional level cook's son, who's a winemaker in Sonoma County, will never be served such a meal. He does not have a history with foods that include daily Jell-O recipes and Bisquick. Nor will he know the joys of squirrel stew, the fresh sturgeon roe fresh from the morning's catch, or steaming syrup in the springtime maple bush. He would relish the slow foods prepared during my subsistence upbringing, directed by my grandmother mostly. My mother, a non-traditional college student during my teens, resorted to instant meals, and these have left their mark. I get nostalgic for Chef Boyardee pizza kits. According to scientists, the hippocampus part of the brain manages both formation of new memories and sense of smell. Food, a bouquet of aromas, provides a daily connection to the past. My life on the reservation intertwines with memories of subsistence hunting and fishing, gardens tended by my grandfather, and the bounty found in Wisconsin supper clubs. Cottage cheese, whole corn soup, Pabst Blue Ribbon beer, mashed potatoes, chili poured over macaroni. All of these evoke the locations and the people with whom I consume them, as well as the delicious meals. I cannot separate foods from the moments in my life when I first tasted them. This collection of stories, beginning when I was 5, comes from memories, but every story makes me think of the food connected to it, so this is a backward food memoir. The stories appear first with the characters, then the food memories and recipes. It is a personal food map of the Menominee Reservation and neighboring towns with guest appearances by relatives and friends. Yes, some indigenous mysticism occurs, as well as a ridiculous story about mezcal worms, which he and his nephew or his cousin froze and saved for a special consumption feast. Canned tamales have as much power in my memory as my grandmother's wild rice with partridge stew. And if you have ever wondered how to roast a porcupine, here is your chance. Roast porcupine is considered a survival food. Its meat is fatty, unlike most wild game. The animal is abundant and relatively easy to dispatch. Skinning and cleaning it, however, is more difficult. A chef preparing porcupine has to contend with thousands of sharp quills, and I've been told that pillowcases are an effective tool. Serves 10 people. 1 porcupine, 1 cup salt, 1 teaspoon baking soda, 3 onions, 4 slices thick bacon, 6 jalapeno peppers, 2 teaspoons black pepper, salt and pepper to taste. Chop the porcupine carcass into a few manageable portions. Place them in a large kettle with water, salt, and soak overnight, drain and rinse, and do this several times until it is less gamey. Add 1 onion and water to cover it, boil, then place the pieces in a roasting pan and lay bacon slices and the chopped onions on top with jalapeno peppers. Place the roasting pan in the oven, and while cooking, check to make sure enough water is in the pan to keep it from drying out. Roast until tender, about 90 minutes. So you have learned something this afternoon. And thank you again very much for this wonderful award.
Thank you, Denise. That's Denise Lowe, speaking about her late husband, Thomas Picor Wesso, Survival Food, Northwood Stories by a Menominee Cook, published by Wisconsin Historical Society Press, another Josephine Miles Award winner from Pen Oakland. And incidentally, I understand that now at Whole Foods, you can get Beyond Porcupine for vegans. It's but we still respect the recipe. The original recipe is still good, but for the vegans, Beyond Impossible Porcupine, I think it was.
Okay.
Anyway, thank you, Denise. The next award will be presented by a co-founder of Pen Oakland, and I wanted to see what ChatGPT would say about the co-founder of Pen Oakland, and it said Ishmael Reed is an acclaimed American writer, poet, essayist, and playwright, celebrated for his satirical and genre-defying works. Well, that's good enough for ChatGPT, but I think I should depart and just tell you my personal introduction for Ishmael. I met Ishmael almost 50 years ago. Hard to believe. He was my writing teacher, and he was great. He did everything except right for me. And that has been, he kept me in the game though. He kept me in the game. He said, journalism, that's good. I went into journalism. I started writing poetry recently, mostly because I started reading his book, Why the Black Hole Sings the Blues. And recently, his Black Genius, his poem Black Genius was poem for a day, which I subscribed to and I read. And I said, Ishmael's a poem for the day. And starting December. Anyway, it's because of Ishmael that I have stayed true to my writing instincts, even though I didn't finish that MFA program. And I always, I just always got to thank him for saving my life. He's a recipient of numerous awards, including a MacArthur Fellowship. He's also an activist and educator. He certainly has helped educate me throughout my life. Introducing the next Josephine Miles Award, here is Pen Oakland co-founder Ishmael Reed.
Thanks. Emil, I want to thank Tennessee for manning the ship here.
Yes.
And Lucille for the beautiful award calligraphy that she designs for every recipient. I've written something about Danny Romero called The Poet of Burgers and Fries. George Clinton would love this book. One of his memorable lines is, "Do fries go with that shake?" A phrase that pinpoints how Americans frequent diners more than they attend church. Once in a while, the food inspectors find rat droppings in the kitchens of these establishments. But when you're a character high on dollar a pint wine, heroin, or Valium, you don't mind the shabby surroundings. One of your stops as you stumble through Oakland's dark and long nights while evading the Oakland Police Department, the department that gave us the riders who beat up people and planted drugs on them. When caught, one of the riders fled to Mexico. But a suburban jury let them walk. A Black juror tearfully said that white jurors brought up the movie Dirty Harry about how the riders were justified because they operated in a tough urban environment. I haven't met a veteran from Vietnam who wasn't screwed up in the head. The narrator's friend Reynolds might have been chosen for the NBA team, but after the war, he doesn't get his thrills from jump shots, but from heroin. He's not alone. Quote, "People are smoking rock all over town. Sometimes the rival distributors got into shootouts over territory. There were shootouts on my block because Ronald Reagan and Colonel North decided that sacrificing blacks and browns was worth achieving anti-communist goals." The narrator's father is a fall-down drunk. He joins the queue that lines up for their morning alcoholic fix. In one scene, the father and the son pass each other at the entrance of a liquor store. He might have gotten, the narrator might have gotten his facility with language from his mother, who worked in a library and was an avid reader. The father once had goals. He brought candy home from his job, and so did his friends, but they're all wounded, not only by war, but also by society that's uncomfortable with their presence. Their persecutors are the invaders. The border about which they are fixated is there because the pro-slavers defeated the Mexican abolitionists in a war that caused more casualties than the Americans lost in World War I. Yet these men, like the narrator's father, fought to save their democracy. The father is a patient in a veterans hospital. Romero knows the culture, black and brown, the cars, a 63 or 64 Impala, Uncle Louie's lowrider car, cars that today would be worth a fortune. He watches Bruce Lee films, Jackie Chan in Rush Hour. He is inspired by King Kong and listens to Little Anthony and the Imperialists. Excuse me, the Imperials. Sorry. Think about that last election. The culture cannot erase the death that hangs over the comings and goings of the narrator. Nowadays, politicians talk about the working class, but few American writers write poetry about them. Romero is a throwback to the proletariat writers of the 1930s who were subjected to a backlash because they wrote about things that the establishment wanted to remain in the dark. Romero might have the rarefied position of a professor, but he never forgot the situation on the ground. Danny Romero, congratulations.
Thank you very much, Ishmael. Thank you for that very kind introduction. Nice to see you. Nice to see everyone else too. Thank you all for being here. I have other people I'd like to thank as well on my journey here. I'm honored and humbled today to be among you all and to receive this award. I was in a class at Berkeley with Ishmael in 1985, and I remember him saying most writers write in obscurity, and so I did, and so I have, except for today. And I appreciate the award. I appreciate Mi Vida Oakland being, of course, associated with Pen Oakland, as it should be. And I would want to thank my father. He was a Marine in World War II. He enlisted on December 8th, 1941. And I'm actually writing a book about that. I'm trying to do some research on his journey. My mother actually did work in a library. And some of my first memories are being at the library, 4 years old, right after the Watts riots, and fascinated with the building and, of course, the world. And I still am fascinated with the world. I want to thank my older brothers and sisters. I have 4 older brothers and 2 older sisters. Too many to name, but I learned a lot from each one of them. And I was born in '61, so yeah, there's a lot to learn, as we all know. I want to thank my teachers, Sisters of Mercy to begin with, right? And my college professors, including Ishmael, for encouraging me and for tolerating my nonsense. Because I know, you know, young people get caught up in nonsense, right? I want to thank Choya Needles for publishing the book. I want to thank my wife for the life we have together. I want to thank my son. I believe in him, and he believes in me. Thank you again, Pen Oakland. It's a great honor, and you know, let's have a good time. Thank you.
Congratulations again, Danny Romero. Mi Vida Oakland and Other Poems, Chola Needles Arts and Literary Library, the publishers. Congratulations to Danny. Our next award, I will introduce the person who will introduce the winner of the next award, and that is the next presenter is Cheryl Fabio. She's an American documentary filmmaker and educator, nonprofit director known for her work highlighting African American cultural narratives. Raised in East Oakland, she's the daughter of Sarah Webster Fabio, a prominent poet and figure in the Black arts movement. She earned her BA in sociology and photography from Fisk, graduated with a master's in production from Stanford. Her directorial debut, Rainbow Black, poet Sarah W. Fabio, 1976, is an intimate portrait of her mother's life and work. Throughout the years, she's done a number of different films, but she's also known as the founder and executive director of the Sarah Webster Fabio Center for Social Justice, a nonprofit organization dedicated to using the arts to promote social change. She continues to produce films that address critical social issues, contributing significantly to both the arts and her community. Presenting the next Josephine Miles Award, here is Cheryl Fabio.
Thank you, Emil. That's more than the 2 sentences that I sent you. Thank you. A Josephine Miles Award is being presented to Dylan Penningroth for his book Before the Movement: The Hidden History of Black Civil Rights. Dylan's stories give us access to the lives of the enslaved while challenging our assumptions about Black people's involvement in property law, family law, and contracts. This deeply researched history represents important missing elements in our understanding of the institution and practices of American slavery, the world it created, and the subsequent civil rights movement. On the jacket of Before the Movement is this statement: acclaimed historian Dylan Penningroth revises the conventional story of civil rights to tell a forgotten prehistory of the marches of the 1960s. Drawing on sources found in the basements of county courthouses across the nation, he reveals that African Americans have thought about, talked about, and used the law going back as far as even the era of slavery. They dealt constantly with the laws of property, contracts, inheritance, marriage and divorce, of associations, and more. Before the Movement is an account of Black legal lives that looks beyond the Constitution and the criminal justice system to recover a rich, broader vision of Black life, a vision allied with, yet distinct from, the freedom struggle. Dylan Penningroth has enjoyed an amazing career specializing in African American and U.S. socio-legal history. He's written other books and received recognition and awards, including fellowships from the NEH, the National Science Foundation, and Stanford's Humanities Centers. All of this and more is spelled out in the beautiful souvenir program provided by Pen Oakland. What isn't shared in that document is the depths to which Dylan goes into gathering the details in his book, Before the Movement. So Dylan, maybe you can share an example of your research methods as you accept this Pen Oakland Josephine Miles Award.
Oh, goodness. Thank you so much, Cheryl, for those wonderfully generous introduction. I guess all I can probably say about the research method and going to those courthouses is that it was a bear. The book took me 20 years, and that's one reason why I had to go out and gather all that. But you mentioned in your emails to me that I might say a word or two about what the book is, because I imagine many people haven't read it or seen it. And really, the book has 2 goals. It's trying to offer a distinctive model for how to write about African American history. So that's the first goal. And the second goal is to tell a story about civil rights. And I try to unfold those 2 agendas partly through stories about my own family. And so the very first thing that you read is a story about my great-great-great uncle Jackson Holcomb, who was enslaved in Southside Virginia, and who during the closing days of the Civil War was approached by a bunch of Confederate soldiers who were running away from General Grant, and they wanted to ride in his boat across the Appomattox River. And he gave them a ride, and when they got to the other side, they took out money and they paid him. And that is a very strange thing for heavily armed Confederate soldiers to do. And so that set me on a journey to try and figure out, what is this world that something like that could happen in? Now, I'm a historian, and you may or may not know that historians, we're allergic to prediction, and we're allergic to prescription. That is to say, we don't pretend to know what the future holds, and we don't tell people what they should do. I'm going to break the historian's code just a little bit and offer 3 ways I think this book might be relevant for our time, or at least be resonant. The first way is it's about American law. I think that this book can go some distance to help desegregate American law. So some of you may know that in law school and in popular culture, the term civil rights is treated as a special minority-focused body of law. But in fact, what I've found is that cases brought by Black people helped make American law, not just in cases that were, quote unquote, about race, but also in areas like contract law, property law. And these are the areas that are actually the most prestigious in American law's teaching, and they're considered part of the core curriculum in law school. The second reason I think this story of Black legal lives resonates today is that it opens up a way of rooting present-day movement activism in a deep history of Black legal activity and Black legal thought. And I say that deliberately because we often think about legal thought as something that happens in these sort of esoteric boardrooms in law schools and maybe at the Supreme Court. I'm writing about Black legal thought that's happening across backyards and fences and in streets. The third reason I think that this story of Black legal lives can still matter is that I think it opens a different perspective on Black life itself. And in order to see that clearly, we have to take seriously relationships between Black people, including relationships of inequality and subordination. And that means seeing Black people's political and economic and religious and family commitments as something more than episodes in race relations, more than echoes of America's original sin. My basic premise, when you come right down to it, is that Black people's lives are worth studying in themselves. I want to thank my editor, Dan Gersel, and the whole team at Norton Live Right Publishing. I want to thank my family above all for everything they did over the past 20 years to distract me from researching and writing and to go do more important things. And finally, I want to thank Cheryl Fabio, Tennessee Reed, Emil Guillermo, and the entire Pen Oakland organization for choosing Before the Movement for a Josephine Miles Award. I'm grateful and deeply honored. Thank you.
Well, you're very welcome, Dylan. Dylan C. Penningroth, Before the Movement, The Hidden History of Black Civil Rights, an award winner of the Josephine Miles Award from Pen Oakland. Live Right is the publisher. Congratulations again, Dylan. For our next award, I'll introduce the presenter who will introduce the award winner. The presenter is octogenarian, his word, his term, not me, but I guess it's accurate. It's octogenarian Jack Foley. He's a California poet who has published 13 books of poetry, 3 books of critical essays, and a 2-volume chrono-encyclopedia of California poetry, visions, and affiliations. California poetry from 1940 to 2005. That means it will not include the work of the current poet laureate of Ripon, California, myself. He became known through his multi-voice performances with his late wife, Adele, and has presented poetry on Berkeley radio station KPFA since 1988. He currently resides in Oakland with his new life partner, Sanjay Land. Here is your next presenter, octogenarian Jack Fold. I think.
There we go. Thank you, Emil. I had my audio muted. Pat Thomas is a counterculture historian and archival music producer and liner note writer, whose expertise and interests have helped him author such books as Listen, Whitey, The Sights and Sounds of Black Power, 1965 to 1975, and Did It, Jerry Rubin, an American revolutionary. He co-curated Invitation to Openness, the jazz and soul photography of Les McCann, 1960 to 1980. Co-edited My Week Beats Your Year, Encounters with Lou Reed, and contributed to The Original Adventures of Ford Fairlane, The Long-Lost Rock and Roll Detective, and Kerouac on Record, a literary soundtrack. Thomas was a consultant on the PBS documentary The Black Panthers, Vanguard of the Revolution, and compiled the 3-CD box set The Last Word on First Blues for the Allen Ginsberg estate, and the 2-CD set Songs of Innocence and Experience. And now, Material Wealth. It's a marvelous read. Shards of history showing forth the contours of a life via its always vibrant, always whispering bits, pictures, and pieces of a famous creative man's fabulous detritus, who said history can't be fun. Pat Thomas.
Thank you. Well, it's an honor to accept this award. To me, getting this award, especially connected to the Bay Area, is a lifelong thread. I moved to San Francisco in 1987, and the first thing I did was make a beeline to City Lights, mainly because of my obsession with the Beats and Allen Ginsberg in particular. In 1999, I moved to Oakland and made a beeline to the house of Black Panther David Hilliard. And David Hilliard mentored me while I researched the Black Panthers' connection to music and poetry and spoken word recordings. And I know David Hilliard is a Pen Oakland Award winner. My next book is an oral history and visual history of Grove Press and the Evergreen Review. And that leads to a connection of Josephine Miles, because the second issue of Evergreen Review in 1957 was the San Francisco issue that put all of the Beats on the map. They were all in there, including people like Kerouac before he had published On the Road, and Josephine Miles was in that. Ginsberg, of course, wrote not most, but quite a bit of his best known work in the streets of San Francisco, in bungalows in Berkeley, in Oakland. Obviously, almost every book he ever did was published by City Lights. His archives are here in the Bay Area in Stamford. And for those of you wondering, well, why did the world need yet another book about Allen Ginsberg? Well, they needed this one, in my opinion, because it's not a biography. There's tons of biographies. It's called Material Wealth as a pun. Bob Dylan stated recently that Allen Ginsberg was not into material wealth. He was into intellectual wealth and into cultural wealth. And so Allen never threw anything away. Every letter, every document, everything is all at Stanford. Me and Peter Hale, the Ginsberg estate, went through maybe 30,000 items, picked about 1,000 of our favorites. And the thing about Allen is he was willing, many of us today, there's so much hate. Obviously, I think probably everyone on this panel is not a Trump fan, obviously. But someone like Allen would have confronted Trump, for better, for worse, right? And what I mean by that is one of the things that's in my book is a letter to George Lincoln Rockwell, who was running the American Nazi Party decades ago, who decided he was going to assassinate Allen for being a gay commie Jew. Allen wrote to him and said, rather than assassinate me, why don't we get together and talk? Another thing in my book is a fascinating transcription of a phone call between Allen and Henry Kissinger in 1971, discussing the Vietnam War. Allen got Kissinger on the phone and suggested they both take off their clothes, get naked, and go on national TV and debate the Vietnam War. This is one of the many reasons I love Allen Ginsberg. And so the book is filled with these types of, they're not just stories, but these are the actual letters. You know, this is a visual annotated book. And when I got an email out of the blue from Jack saying I'd won this award, needless to say, I was completely blown away, especially by all the people before me that have gotten it. And so it just feels very appropriate and very humbling to be received an award that is connected to so many other people I've admired. So thank you very much.
Congratulations to Pat Thomas, author of Material Wealth, Mining the Personal Archive of Allen Ginsberg, published by Powerhouse Books. And that concludes my portion of the awards. I'd like to introduce Tennessee Reed to come up and conclude the Josephine Miles portion and introduce the Adele Foley and Reginald Lockett Awards.
Thank you, everyone. So this now concludes the Josephine Miles Award, and it's now time to present the Adele Foley Award and the Reginald Lockett Lifetime Achievement Award, which both are being awarded to two people. It's your turn. Jack?
What's for me?
Yes, it's time for you to introduce Nina Serrano.
All right. Okay. Happy to do it. I didn't realize the picture wasn't me. It was a room. Okay. Nina Serrano is an American poet, writer, storyteller, and independent media producer who lives in Vallejo, California. She is the author of Heart Songs, the collected poems of Nina Serrano, and Pass It On, How to Start Your Own Senior Storytelling Program in the Schools. Her poems are widely anthologized, including the literary anthology Under the Fifth Sun, Latino Writers from California, and 3 anthologies of peace poems edited by the late Mary Rudge. She's also translated 2 chapbooks from Peruvian poet Adrian Arias. She currently leads storytelling workshops at senior centers and elementary schools through stagebridge.org. She is the former director of the San Francisco Poetry in the Schools program and the Bay Area's Storytellers in the Schools program, a Latina activist for social justice, women's rights, and the arts. And of course, a mainstay at KPFA Radio, a benevolent hurricane of creative activity, properly the first name in the Nina Jack Show. Nina, come on here and show us what you got.
Well, thank you so much, Jack Foley. I think that biography is a little dusty because I'm now 90 years old, so I'm not quite as active, though I still do 3 radio programs on KPFA about poetry, and I still write poetry quite often. Am I expected to say more?
Whatever you like, whatever you like. And just a thank you would be great.
Well, thank you. A deep thank you. I'm really excited to be among so many poets because at 90, I don't get out and about so much. So it's exciting to see all your faces.
You're a great nonagenarian. Thank you, Nina.
Tennessee, do I just jump in and do?
Go ahead, yes.
Okay. Give me a sec. The Adele Foley Award for Lifetime Achievements is being presented to Dorsey Nunn. I can't exactly remember when I first met Dorsey Nunn, but I liked him instantly. And it might have been in 2010 when Michelle Alexander visited Berkeley as her book, The New Jim Crow, was being released. I saw Dorsey as an organizer who could achieve tangible results. He spent over 40 years pushing for criminal justice reform. He's the first formally incarcerated director of a public interest law office in California, Legal Services for Prisoners with Children, or LSPC. I knew his impact would be global, but it wasn't until reading his book, What Kind of Bird Can't Fly, a memoir of resilience and resurrection, that the real scope of his journey became clear. What Kind of Bird Can't Fly was written with Lee Romney, a journalist, an audio storyteller, a podcaster, and together they created a masterful articulation of Nunn's well-lived life. Having once been sentenced to life in California's Department of Corrections, Dorsey's leadership emanates from his heart, but is strategic and successful. In the foreword to What Kind of Bird Can't Fly, Michelle Alexander writes, "So much of what I've come to know and understand over the years about the second-class status imposed upon people labeled criminal or felons, I've learned from Dorsey and the people who comprise All of Us or None, an organization he co-founded. Although I have fancy degrees and Dorsey does not, there's never been a time in our friendship in which he hasn't been schooling me, not so much in terms of theory, but in practice." The work of LSPC and All of Us or None is credited with creating the Elder Freeman Policy Fellowship, ending long-term solitary confinement in California, passing Ban the Box laws locally, statewide, and at the federal level, ending the shackling of pregnant women in prison, and ending racially biased sentence enhancements. That was in 2017, SB 180, among other accomplishments. With this Adele Foley Award, Pen Oakland honors Dorsey Nunn's incredible contributions. Dorothy is with us today, so please say a few words.
First of all, thank you. You know, I need to start there because this is something that I didn't anticipate. I didn't anticipate ever receiving an award for literary talents. You know, I'd like to thank Lee Romney that was there for me. And this book begins probably upon the death of my older brother. I had a friend return every letter that I had wrote her from 1974 to 1981. You know, and I was thumbing through what I had said. And one of the things that I came across was the fact that I was writing extremely poorly at the beginning. You know, I think that Emil, when you spoke, you talked about learning and meeting Ishmael in 50 years ago. I'm 73 years old, and I turned 73 on December the 4th. I was learning how to read at 23, you know, and so it's like I didn't anticipate this, you know. I anticipated that other people would be writing about me, you know, and that was the case. Michelle Alexander, that was the case. Susan Burton, that was the case. Charette wrote about me too. Christine Charette and Cunningham. I can anticipate that because I knew that I was going to get out and do something that was fundamentally what I believed in. And I think that, you know, other people that believed won stuff, you know, and I can remember like sitting back reading about the Vietnam War. They believed and they won. I can remember reading about Toussaint Overture inside a prison. He was inspirational to me. I can remember reading about The Wretch of the Earth. He was inspirational to me. I can remember reading Soul on Ice. He was inspirational to me. But I don't know that the audience that I'm even speaking to that gave me the award recognized that people are being severely punished as a result of these readings. You know, so like when we ended long-term solitary confinement, people were spending 30 years in the hole because they read a copy of George Jackson's book, Blood in My Eye. I was, you know, I'm extremely honored, but I'm extremely privileged because I got out of prison before they started punishing people for reading books. They're still punishing people in prison for reading books. So like, you know, like to be lifted up and receive an award, and my homies are still hung out in the dry for reading the material that we're writing is unusual. And by the way, the reason that I'm so humbled and so glad to receive this award, it gives me a certain degree of legitimacy so other people can read my material that's still in prison, because not everybody's writing material for people to actually follow suit that's in prison. George Jackson was one of them. Malcolm X was another. So at a certain point, the stuff that people are writing about, what happens when we learn how to read? And by the way, who I became earlier as an incarcerated person, that identity in part was shaped by the police. Mm. You know, when they took my first bicycle as a stolen bicycle and my father had given it to me. Well, tomorrow, probably 220 people are going to receive bicycles that we're pushing out through all of us and non-illegal services to children of incarcerated parents, because at a certain point, I was taught that the social criteria of the truth is the practice. It's the practice. You know, all the words in the world don't actually suffice for the fundamental thing you do with your practice. You know, so like I'm honored, you know, I'm honored that Heyday Press picked me up. You know, I'm honored that Lee Romney, that I chased around because I thought that I had a story, and somebody told me if I didn't tell my story, somebody else would. And I figured out that I needed to actually speak to my truth. And my truth is, I came to Oakland just like any other person that was a slave coming to the United States, drugged to Oakland in chains. I established residency in Oakland while I was sitting there fighting a murder case in the county jail. And that's how I established a residency. I learned to read from a guy by the name of Nathaniel Harrington, and I was actually coached by the Black Liberation Army and the BGF that actually had political education courses on the yard, and they was teaching us because they cared about us. So at a certain point, the work that I do the work based on the fact that I made a promise to return to the community an asset instead of a liability. And that promise was extracted by other men, Black men that actually cared about the community when nobody thought that they were caring about the community. So I'm grateful for this award. I'm grateful for learning how to read. And I'm grateful for this distinguished group of people. And I'm grateful that that people gave me the time and didn't call saying that I deserved a second chance. And probably I hadn't necessarily ever received a fair opportunity. You know, so like I was convicted of a crime. I helped change the context of how people describe those things, like the formerly incarcerated people. I was convicted of a crime and took and helped Angela Davis take an obscure term out of a Mike Davis book called The Prison Industrial Complex and introduced it in public speak. I was convicted of a crime, but I banned the box in the state of California. And when everybody was asking me, was I crazy? 267 million people stay in the United States that actually live up under the jurisdiction of that stuff. So like me being privileged is just a small part of it. Me being honored. Hey, to be nominated, I felt honored. I think I told you that, Cheryl. I said, I was honored to be nominated. Let alone win, just to be nominated. Because people like me normally not nominated for book awards. And recently I was also nominated for the independent booksellers as one of the made finalists on that list too. So it's like at a certain point, I'm beginning to think about, what was this life really for? And I think that it was for actually doing public service. And that still gives me a great deal of joy. And I'm grateful that y'all actually recognize me. So it's like, Martine Satras that actually picked up the acquisition editor for Heyday. I'm grateful. Lee Romney, who I followed around and said, let's write a book, let's write a book, let's write a book. I'm honored, for legal services for prisoners with children that trusted me with an organization when I wasn't an attorney and put me at the head of an attorney, head of an organization that was a legal service office. I'm honored because Ellen Berry actually did that. I'm honored for Angela Davis that ran into it. So ran into my life and I read her material also. So I probably need to caution people, especially those that's actually writing to people in prison. It made my world larger. And at the same time, it made me recognize that I was in prison. So I couldn't see beyond the walls until I learned how to read. So thank you for this honor. And definitely, I wonder how come they discriminated against me so hard and they elected a damn president with 34 felonies. And I wonder, how do the president get elected and everybody inside of the jail and prison all across the United States don't even have a fucking right to vote? Excuse my language. So, those are some basic questions that I still think that goes unaddressed, is how can you have a person sitting in the White House with 34 felonies and not have a person practicing democracy in any prison in the United States? So anyway, thank you for the award. And thank you for the 5 or 6, 7 minutes that I spoke over. But maybe it's only because I'm inspired and I'm grateful by the presence of everybody else is here. And I'm glad to join a club that, that they gave me an award for writing a book. I got a lot of awards, I didn't anticipate going to the White House either, but turned out to be that way also. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Dorsey. Thank you. So now it is my deep pleasure to honor novelist, poet, dramatist, and essayist Judy Juanita with the 2024 Reginald Lockett Lifetime Achievement Award. Judy's important and significant work over the decades has truly been an inspiration to so many, including myself. Born in Berkeley and raised in Oakland, Judy Juanita joined the nation's first Black student union at San Francisco State and subsequently the Black Panther Party, BPP. She edited the BPP newspaper and worked in the Breakfast for Children program while finishing her BA at SF State. 5 days after graduating, she became the youngest professor of the nation's first Black Studies program. Decades later, she would appreciate that she had participated in 4 key social movements. The Black Arts Movement, BAM, where she performed her poetry with Leroy Jones, Amiri Baraka, who became Amiri Baraka, in the Black Arts and Culture Troupe. The BPP, where she edited its weekly newspaper and worked in the groundbreaking Free Breakfast for Children program. The Black Student Movement and historic 4.5-month SFSU strike, where she edited Black Fire, the strike journal, and established the nation's first Black Studies department, where she taught Black psychology and Black journalism. Judy Juanita's newest poetry book is Godzilla, spelled GAWDZILLA, which conflates the destructive prehistoric sea monster Godzilla with US imperialism and racism. Her poetry collection, Manhattan My Ass, here in Oakland, won the American Book Award in 2021. In her semi-autobiographical novel, Virgin Soul, in 2013, protagonist Janice joins the Black Panther Party in the 60s in the San Francisco Bay Area. Juanita's collection of short stories, The High Price of Freeways, published in 2022, won the 2021 Tart Fiction Award. Everyone, let's please welcome Judy Juanita.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. I am so honored by this. I'm grateful to Pen Oakland. I was shocked when I found out this news, but I still thank you so much for it. I want to say that Ishmael and Al, they mentored me before I even knew them. Why? Because I was on the East Coast where I lived for 18 years in New Jersey. And I just always read A Gathering of the Tribes, followed every word of it, did take some courses from Joe Johnson then, but, and then I read Al Young's book, novels. I read all of his books, but I particularly was trying to emulate Snakes over and over again. How come I can't write a novel that, that's succinct? But so before I even met them, when I moved back to California, they were mentors. So I was very happy. I've been very grateful to Ishmael that he kind of took me under his wing, said that I was, to his surprise, a Black feminist writer with a sense of humor. And he really opened a lot of doors for me. I'm very grateful. I can't talk today without saying that 3 days ago, I was fired by my, position, from my position at the University of California. And, they had a laundry list of things I didn't do. But, I kind of knew, oh my gosh, I entered the Pantheon, with our list of other outspoken Black writers who have been kicked out of the academy or shunned by the academy. It's all right. It means sometimes resistance means you're doing the right thing. So my dream at 19 was to write a novel. And I walked around town, Oakland, Berkeley, San Francisco, with this notebook, trying to fill it with my brilliant observations, and I had none at that point. So not much came of that solitary notebook, but the desire to fill it never left me. I simply hadn't lived enough. My fervent participation in the Black Power and Black student movements provided me with much raw experience. Through my 20s, the desire to write grew along with being married and becoming a mother. But I lacked the craft to write fiction, poetry, and drama, having earned a living in journalism and teaching. So finally, at 33, I got my courage up. I was living in New Jersey, and I began attending writing workshops in New Jersey and New York City, because I was living right outside of New York City. So the next 30 years, that's from 1980 to 2010, were a golden period of attending writing workshops on both coasts where I lived, making many writing friendships, which are crucial to developing as a writer, and attending all of these readings and workshops and conferences and just soaking it up like a sponge. And along the way, I started getting published in tons of obscure little journals that maybe lasted for 2 months or a year. But through that, I was cutting my eye teeth. It was a wonderful kind of phenomenon. So here I am at 78 years old, so happy to be alive, to still be an outlaw. There we go. Okay. Having earned 2 major awards, one, the American Book Award from the Before Columbus Foundation for Manhattan My Ass, You're in Oakland, my poetry collection, and the Tart Fiction Award for the High Price of Freeways, of short stories about primarily about the California experience. So I'm very happy, and oh my gosh, I filled so many notebooks since then. And so I'd like to share one short poem that's in this book called Godzilla. And I'm gonna put this, is my share screen up? Did I do it right? Let's see. I'll see. Wait a minute, just a minute. Let me put the share screen up. Yeah. Sharing is not turned on. Okay. Send a request. Let's see. Okay. So anyway, I don't want to belabor. The poem is called The Powerful Nurse, the Powerful Baby. The baby talks in the hospital drainage. I could have been a contender, a half baby, quarter baby, 8th baby, 16th baby. The baby sticks around, waiting for the nurse to come back. He remembers her orange Dansko clogs. She can talk to the world about how he drowned. The baby waits for her to come back, but she works 4 days on, 3 days off. He's jealous of whole babies who wait in expectation on the other floor. He wants to join their club. Nobody wants you, not even Godzilla. The baby has to join his kind in the sewage pipes of Los Angeles, New York City, Chicago, in the pipes 22 inches below the top ground. The baby would settle to be an atonement baby, an after 3 miscarriages baby. The baby wanted wholeness. He wouldn't have minded being as ugly as Godzilla, to be alive, to eat mush and grow teeth, to gather fuzz between his toes instead of guts swirling around him. When the shift changes, the baby becomes a rush of dirty water. The drainage clears the dream of being once and again. Thank you so much, Pen Oakland.
You want me to do Marco, Tennessee? Who's next?
Marco was the last person.
Is there somebody before that?
No, that's it. Then we conclude the ceremony.
Yeah, Marco's not here, so I'll read this statement here. As a result of a trip to Paris at 17, I discovered that the American school system was lying to me. We were told that Africans were savages and boiled people in cauldrons. When students were told to choose a country to represent on United Nations Day, none of the Black students chose an African country. We were ashamed of Africa. We shared the opinion of those Blacks that the drummer Babatunde encountered when coming to America. He said that their opinion of Africa was a place where lions walked through the streets. In Paris, I met African students who challenged this image. There were posters all over town advertising the African ballet. Nobody had acquainted us with African art and history. When I returned to the United States, I dropped out of high school and went to work in a library. If the school system was lying about Africa, what else were they lying about? Our image of Mexico was framed by the movies, in which tall, handsome gringos always got the Mexican beauty. And then there was the Cisco Kid. Some books and intellectuals could have given us a more truthful idea of American history, but their books weren't part of the curriculum. In the 1960s, television's recording of protests against the Eurocentric emphasis of the school system led to the begrudging acceptance of ethnic studies by Eurocentric institutions. Eurocentric institutions don't even get Europe right. There are 55 countries in Europe, incidentally, not just France and Germany. So Malcolm X, Hispanic, Native American, and Asian American scholars gave us a different look at American history. Marco Portales is an heir to this tradition. At this moment, while those who are called invaders over in the Native American Studies Department select settler leaders to force Mexicans and Mexican Americans from the country and across the border, Marco Portales tells us how the border got there. The triumph of enslavers over abolitionists. The enslavers had more firepower. Portales writes, President James K. Polk and Congress declared war on Mexico in 1846, 10 years after the Alamo, which was occupied by enslavers. 2 years later, the United States took 50% of Mexico's land, including California, Arizona, New Mexico, and the southern parts of Nevada, Utah, and Colorado. Mexicans living in the Southwest became Mexican Americans in 1849. And enslaver James Polk wanted to create slave states out of Mexico and Cuba. And part of the invading force that murdered thousands of Mexicans were the future Confederate generals, Robert E. Lee, Stonewall Jackson, their future president, Jefferson Davis. When asked by his sister whether he had any regrets about his role in the slaughter of innocent Mexicans, men, women, and children, Stonewall Jackson said he didn't lose a night's sleep over it. In his book, Why Affirmative Action Remains Necessary, a memoir, he wrote, appreciating diversity has been one of the central concerns of my life, largely because we were brought up thinking that we are at the center of God's universe. Finding out this is not the case is a mind-altering experience. And it is a realization that unfortunately many people never experience. To think that another person is just as important and significant as one is a life-changing experience. It means that life is not only about me and mine, but also about others who are like us, but different. It is about the people next door. the next country and across the world where we have either visited or not, depending on our travels. Learning to give value to the experiences of others is a difficult business, but it is the essence of being human. That is why we should not kill, maim, or assault other individuals. We cannot ever make up what we have done to other people. That's why most of the religions of the world teach us to love and appreciate our neighbors as much as we care for ourselves and for our own well-being. Okay. 2 paintings in the Capitol Rotunda define the roles that the political and cultural establishment have assigned to the rest of us. One is by John Vanderlyn of Christopher Columbus, landing in the West Indies, October 12th, 1492. Incidentally, he bragged about raping a indigenous woman, said he made her into his whore. The other, this painting depicts the ceremony in which Pocahontas, daughter of an Algonquin chief, is baptized, 1613 or 1614, in the colony of Jamestown, Virginia. We are asked to revere an invader who committed genocide in America and are told that we are savages who can redeem ourselves by undergoing gringoization. Not to share the values of the cultural and political elite is said to be engaged in identity politics, which means we don't share the values of the columnists of the New York Times. We have to read The Merchant of Venice one more time. Up to now, they've used subtle persuasion like denying those deemed troublemakers advancement. Now, they're threatening to use force, which is why we need more intellectual soldiers like Marco Portellus, this year's recipient of the Pen Oakland Lifetime Achievement Award. He's not here.
So this concludes the 35th Annual Pen Oakland Awards. Congratulations and thank you to the winners who were able to attend, and congratulations to those who weren't able to attend. Thank you again to Brian Gunther at the Oakland Public Library, Emil Guillermo, Lucille Lang Day, and others for helping set up this virtual event. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Cheryl, thank you all.
Thank you.
Congratulations, everyone.
Thank you. Everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.
See you, everyone.
Yeah, Dorsey.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.